in brightest day, in blackest night. All other podcasts tremble in fright. Losers cower before the power. Oranges lust and blues you can trust. Indigos feel and white ones heal. Yellow scare and green ones dare. That sapphire love and black hands glove will rock your foundation without hesitation. Chad and Mars face evil's might. Respect their power, for they'll make you see the light. Hi, everybody. I'm Chad Bokelman.
I'm Mark Marble.
And this is the LanternCast.
Episode 446.
That's right. We are talking all about issues 2 and 3, both of them, of Infinite Frontier, the event currently ongoing from DC Comics. I think it's safe to call it an event. I don't think it crosses over necessarily the way you would expect a normal event to, but there are a lot of other titles that sort of tie in tangentially or just sort of kind of updating the universe on this, would you say?
If it's an event with a small e.
Yeah.
Certainly based on the pace this thing is going at. It's not going at any kind of breakneck pace, considering there's only six issues, and I haven't read 4 yet, but based on what I've heard, 4 doesn't really pick up the pace considerably. So I think it's safe to say that they're just, that if we had doubts about whether this thing was going to be a true event or a prelude to an event, I think it's pretty safe to say this is just setting up an event.
Yeah. So other than Infinite Frontier, what else are we talking about tonight?
We're going to give some thoughts on the Let There Be Carnage trailer, the new one. It dropped like a week ago. Actually, it dropped right before, I think like the day of or right before the day, either the day of or the day before Chad and I recorded last time. And then we're going to talk about Suicide Squad, the Suicide Squad, since that is super topical. And Chad actually he did see that since he has HBO Max. So once he said that he actually saw it, then it's like, okay, let's discuss.
For sure.
Spoilers, of course, once we get to that part.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All right. So first and foremost, let's get the creative teams. So I'll be talking about issue 2, and I guess we'll recap and then comment, right? Or unless you want to do recap comment.
No, I think recap essentially makes sense in this.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So my story, entitled Infinite Lies, is writer Joshua Williamson, pencilers Paul Pelletier, Jesus Marino, and Zermancio. Norm Rapman, Jesus Marino, and Zermancio are the inkers. Romulo Fajaro Jr. is the colorist. Tom Napolitano is the letterer. Mitch Gerrits is the cover artist. Brian Hitch and Alex Sinclair and puppeteer Lee did the variant covers, and Diego Lopez is associate editor with Jamie S. Rich as the editor. So we open up with Cameron checking in at the Hall of Justice on Earth Zero. She has an appointment there to see Superman, who she refers to as Super Clark. They did confirm that this is on Earth Zero, so I'm not entirely sure when we started calling Superman Super Clark, or if that's just a nickname that's stuck since his alter ego of Clark Kent is now public. I don't know when that happened, but apparently it's there in big Superman lettering, so whatever. Anyways, she is checking in to meet with Superman as well as Batman about the multiverse stuff. She's checking in on the status. She wants to know what's kind of going on with it, how the league's handling things, and they're checking in. She got the report based on everything that happened in Death Metal with Perpetua and the Batman Who Laughs and blah, 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 which she literally says in her thing. So that just, I guess somebody has an interesting opinion on Death Metal who's writing this, I'm guessing. Maybe they're just joking. I don't know. Could be just sarcasm. Anyways, she's saying that, enough of these events have happened at this point that the general public is not going to be sated with the explanation of the league is handling it. But sure enough, in the middle of her trying to get all this information, an alarm goes off and the League has to deal with something. So Superman takes her out of the Hall of Justice while they fly off to deal with it. She checks in with Director Bones, who says, I have another errand for you. There's someone I'd like you to recruit. And she's pulling up a news story that shows Captain Atom is back. We see across Earth 8, 11, 17, 26, 25, 7, and 41 that various pieces of a ship have appeared across the multiverse, and they are the Justice and Carnage, or whatever the hell we're calling this, in the House of Heroes, is gathering the ship to rebuild the shuttle and get a sense of what it was for and where it's from, vibrational frequencies, so on and so forth. In the House of Heroes, Thomas Wayne Batman and from the Flashpoint universe and President Superman are looking at a big map of the multiverse, and Batman says, a multiverse, huh? Different worlds. And President Superman says, we have a guidebook and everything. And Thomas Wayne looks at what he's holding in his hand, and it is the Multiversity Guidebook issue from, if you guys remember when Grant Morrison was doing the Multiversity stuff, that event was happening, the guidebook issue. And Thomas Wayne says, I don't read comic books. Anyways, President Superman checks in with Harbinger, who says Barry Allen was last seen exploring the multiverse. He checks with Thomas to see the last thing he remembers, and all he remembers was just sort of being transported. They go to Earth 22 to check out one of the big fragments of the ship, basically the bigger part of it. And they are attacked by Magog. Or Magog. I never really knew how we're supposed to say that. Back over on Earth Zero, the Alan and Obsidian and Mr. Terrific, along with Savage, are running tests at the Brownstone to see what has happened with the explosion. They reveal that other people are also missing. It looks like we have Dr. Midnight, Atom Smasher, Hourman, Wildcat, the female Wildcat, the Atom, like the Golden Age Atom, Power Girl, as well as Jade. Obsidian gets mad at Alan because they already knew some of these people were missing. So maybe he could have stepped in and done something, or warned Jade, or kept a better eye on her, or whatever. This is something that Totality, which is the team that Alan was a part of that we saw in issue 1, has been looking into. One of the things they've been looking into. Savage says basically this is a Totality business. Keep your son in line, that little brat in place. And this is why I don't have kids. They're just a distraction. Send your brat home so we can continue our work. Alan doesn't take that too well, smashes Savage to the ground with a big construct, and immediately decides he's going to take Obsidian's side, and they're going to go look for his daughter. We cut over to Roy Harper, who's in the middle of the desert with his black ring on his finger. He's trying to figure out what's going on, create constructs. He's like, how do I recharge this? Is there an oath? And then he says, what did Hal used to say? And we cut back to a very Green Lantern, Green Arrow style flashback where Speedy is asking Hal, can I try? And Hal says, it's not that easy, Speedy. The ring chose me. And Speedy says, because you're fearless. And then Ollie says, don't be filling my kid with your willpower garbage, Jordan. And Speedy asks, willpower? And Hal says, I guess it just knows I believe in myself. And Speedy says, I wish I had some of that. And Hal says, let me ask you this, kid. When you take a shot, who is in control, you or the bow? And that's when modern day Roy looks down at the ring and lights it up, and he says, bullseye. And then he gets the Black Lantern costume on, flies up, creates a couple of constructs of various villains to do some target practice. He notices he's off the mark just a little bit, starts joking about what his name should be, Black Arrow, blah, blah, blah. And then he realizes Hal's ring could talk to him, right? So talk to me. Why me? Now, the ring doesn't talk, but it lights up really big, and we get this double-page splash of Barry Allen and Change and Thomas Wayne Batman. We also see Darkseid, and we see Psycho Pirate, and then we see this girl, and this girl is Leon, Roy Harper's daughter, who he is under the impression she's dead. He says, Leon alive, show me my daughter, where is she? He freaks out, he says, tell me now. And then all of a sudden, the ring lights up and says, Darkseid is. He screams, black goo goes over him. His Black Lantern symbol changes to an Omega symbol. His skin goes gray. He looks more zombie-like. He takes off immediately straight into the sky as some text says, "Come to me, my Black Lantern." As it's shooting off, some military members on a nearby base see just this streak flying up into the sky, probably another damn superhero. And Captain Atom arrives saying, "Go easy on them. They don't have all have our training." He checks in onto the Metropolis Air Force Base, where in his barracks, as he's packing everything up, Cameron is there to greet him. She wants to recruit him. He says, "I'm retired." She says, "That's not," he says, "I'm done with all this action. I just want to live a quiet life." She says, "That's not the Nathan Atom I used to know. When you are on that mission, you told me never rest. You'd never rest until you felt the world was safe." He says, "That was a long time ago. Lots happened since then." She says, "Right, but you and I have never met before." So she asks from what Earth he's from. He says it doesn't really matter. I can't let you know what I know. You don't understand what's really going on in the multiverse. He'll find out. He'll come for me. He says Darkseid is, as he rips open his containment suit and explodes on the Air Force Base. And in a big mushroom cloud, it says, "Next, Alan Scott and Obsidian kick ass." All right. Into issue 3 we go, I guess.
I reckon so. So with mine, it's weird giving the title. Let's hold off on I'll give the creative team. Let's hold off on the title, considering the relevance of when they introduced the title of this issue. So I'm just trying to see if there's any difference in the creative team. I'm comparing. I'm going to say no. It looks pretty much the same. So let's just go with that. It saves time anyway. So the first page of the issue is a Daily Planet recap. Pretty much it's like the headline, front page of the Daily Planet. And it talks about the JSA headquarters in Gotham destroyed, mysterious dark UFO seen in the skies over Phoenix, origin of explosion in Metropolis military base under wraps, DEO agent Cameron Chase believed dead, and then what is the multiverse? Are there other versions of you out there? What happened if they come here? Listen to our experts explain why you should be afraid of the multiverse. So all those other events we have seen either just in last issue or the first issue. JSA headquarters was the first issue when Jade went missing. The UFO, the dark UFO is Roy. The explosion was Captain Atom, and that also involves obviously Chase, Cameron disappearing. So exactly as last issue teased, that we begin with Obsidian and Alan Scott kicking ass. To me, this reminded me of a little bit of like the beginning of Diamonds of Forever, when James Bond is like beating the crap out of everybody he can find as he's trying to hunt down Blofeld for killing his wife in Her Majesty's Secret Service. That's what this is kind of like. So they're kind of like running the gamut through old JSA villains that could possibly have an idea or be participating in what's going on with Jade and her kidnapping, including Solomon Grundy. They come to deal with Shade. And they have a conversation. Obsidian and Alan have a conversation, and Shade pretty much puts them on the path that perhaps the basic mistake that you're making here potentially is believing that this has to do with you, as in Alan Scott. And while Alan's trying to figure out what this means, Todd figures it out pretty quickly. It's like he's saying it's not one of your enemies, Dad, but one of mine and Jade's. And he goes, "I know who we need to see next." Meanwhile, we're here, "Come to me, my Black Lantern," picking up on what happened with Roy last issue. We get some flashback scenes, including the Speedy on Drugs cover. And while this is going on, Speedy starts coming back to human Black Lantern form. He's not looking like a zombie anymore. Leon, his daughter, is the last thing that he sees before he returns to quote-unquote normal. It's like she's alive, and he realizes that he's out in space. So it's pretty safe to say the ring was almost like taking him to whoever was calling for him, which we all assume is Darkseid. But the ring was pretty much taking him on that trajectory until he basically snapped himself out of it. And he was about ready to make a spaceship construct, and then he realized, hey, the last time I used this, I turned into a zombie, which is not entirely true. It's actually when he was communicating with the ring. That's when it happened. But he's funny. It's like, well, it's space, and there's superheroes and aliens that come all the time. I'm just going to sit here until somebody shows up. And then there's this bright light that blinds him. He goes, "Speak of the devil." Meanwhile, we cut back to Earth 22, and Magog is dealing with President Superman and Thomas Wayne and company, and he's pretty much telling them that it's like you're not welcome here. You're invading my world, and every time somebody from the multiverse arrives, it's caused tragedy. And he really zeroes in on Thomas Wayne. It's like he reeks of reality manipulation. I kind of like that. As that's going on, as Chad mentioned last issue, Justice and Carnage shows up, which is a weird friggin' team to begin with, especially with Captain Carrot. And obviously Magog he's not really impressed by this. I do like the fact that he goes, you can throw whoever you want at me, Machine Head, but you won't like my backup, even though we don't really get his backup. It makes you wonder who that is. President Superman plays Peacemaker, and he goes, Magog is right. This world is his. It's not ours. And he just says, well, we're just this. He describes what Chad did in the last recap about how there's different fragments of this ship all throughout different parts of the multiverse, and we just want to examine this part, and then we'll leave. And Magog says, fine, just make sure you take this abomination, Thomas Wayne, with you when he leaves. Thomas Wayne mentions what Barry Allen said about being able to locate where he was and figure out what world he was on by using vibrations. So they all touched the fragment of the spaceship. President Superman actually gets some information out of it when he puts his hand on it, because he goes, fascinating. And he goes, appears our investigation must continue at my own home. And Thomas Wayne asked a question. It's like, let me ask you something. Do you think Magog is the only person sick of the multiverse? And President Superman's honest enough to say, well, no, really, because I thought the multiverse was coming together in harmony, but I was wrong, implying that clearly that there's more dissent and more dissatisfaction in what's going on than probably anybody would have wanted to believe or certainly hoped. We have a really cool page with Barry Allen and Jay Garrick drawn in your typical, like probably early Silver Age kind of coloring style, which is basically what Barry is thinking in his head as he's still on Earth Omega, and it's basically this gigantic treadmill hamster wheel. Essentially, he's on this cosmic hamster wheel that Psycho Pirate has him on, and he's basically, and this kind of answers one question, I guess. Maybe we thought whether Psycho Pirate was dead or not, but then again, look at Roy, right? Roy can look human and still look zombie-like, because you see him without his mask, and he doesn't look zombie-like. Let's put it that way. So at the very least, or maybe worst case scenario, he is like Roy, where maybe if he has some dead powers that he comes and it goes, or you can control it. He's basically playing with Barry's mind, telling him that, it's like, you were the first one to race from one Earth to another, and now basically I'm using my powers to push you to be the hero you are, to go someplace else. And Barry's like, I'm a hero, I must save them. He sees someone, it's like help. It's like, we need your help, please. And Barry's trying to figure out who it is, and it's like, I'll save you. And Psycho Pirate, with holding his mask close to his face, it's like, yes, save our multiverse, run, Barry, run. Alan and Todd and Oblivion, they end up underneath Bloodhaven, which is where Todd wanted them to go. He uses his darkness powers to get inside. They see the spaceship, and they see Mr. Bones, and they follow Mr. Bones, and then you see all this giant spaceship, and there's energy coming off of it. We see, carrier arcs vibrating. Get those cells loaded, Bones goes, and then Oblivion's like, what kind of spaceship needs prison cells? We hear a hello, boys, and the bounty hunter from the first issue, which was Extract, shows up, and all the guards pull their guns on Alan and Obsidian, who basically go toe to toe with all these guards and start taking them out. Extract tries to get involved, and Alan's like really pissed, and it's like, just tell me where my daughter is and Will. And you hear, I know where Jade is, Alan. And it turns out it's Chase. Cameron's still alive. And she says, you don't understand what's at stake here. Bones' plan is the only way to save our world. Alan's still stunned by all this, and she goes, I'm sorry, and she seemingly blasts Alan, but that's where you cut to back to another one of these spaceships that actually was the one that picked up Roy. And we got introduced to Agent Hammond, otherwise known as Hector Hammond, who was seemingly returned to his pre-mutated state during the whole post-Black Metal fallout. I kind of like in the bottom of the page when Roy's looking up that Hector Hammond almost looks like Krona. Almost looks like a pre-modified, head-growing Krona, the original Krona.
He does.
Yeah. So I thought that was whether that's going to be foreshadowing or just luck of the draw. I thought that was very, very interesting, especially in the shadow. He looks very much like Krona. At this moment, Roy gets this sharp pain going through his head, and Hector Hammond is like, well, stole that technology from sonar, scrambles your equilibrium so you can't use the ring. The bosses weren't sure if that would work, but I'm a little bit of an expert in power rings. And that's when Roy realizes it's Hector Hammond. And he gives us the origin, the explanation I just gave already about how, things were set back, factory settings were returned. I set, on reset, went back to the factory settings, the defaults, and he talks about the bleed. It's like, isn't it beautiful to bleed the worlds between, space between worlds and the multiverse? And he's like, imagine our surprise when you had that ring, that black ring you have on your hand. I'm not even sure it's from our multiverse, but it shows you why. And Roy's like, I don't know. And Hector Hammond's like, yeah, I didn't expect you to, but a deal's been made for you and that ring, Roy. And then at this point, it's like all of a sudden something hit the ship, and Hector Hammond's like, that's impossible. And all the guards start running, and Roy kind of like lashes out, and I like he makes a black energy Hal Jordan construct. That's pretty neat, appropriately, because he decks Hector Hammond. And then as he's doing that, he's like, no, please, not again, as he starts seemingly drifting into zombie mode. And as he's doing this, we hear, great, they must have found some zombie world in the multiverse. You know what that means? Aim for the head. And we see the reconfigured Infinite Incorporated with Jade, Power Girl, among others. And that's the splash page that ends this issue.
For sure. Where do you want to start in terms of, obviously our focus is probably the Roy stuff and the Allen and Obsidian stuff, but anywhere in particular?
It's up to you. Why don't you pick an angle and go for it?
I think the thing that generates probably the most conversation is probably Roy. Just in terms of him learning how to use the ring. It's interesting seeing somebody who's been around Green Lantern but never been a ring bearer to see, to be like, oh, what did Hal used to say, and try and incorporate, just remember how he saw him operate, things like that. So I thought that was really cool. Gave us some good flashbacks, some good stuff. Like I mentioned in the first step, which I guess got some attention online in terms of some of the Twitter responses I saw about the theory about Darkseid. But nothing really revealed here. Darkseid does say, "Come to me, my Black Lantern," and the origins of this ring being even more messed up are like almost confirmed with what Hector Hammond says, because he kind of says something about, we're not even sure this ring is from our multiverse. So that's interesting, because I don't think we ever seen alternate reality Black Lanterns other than the Dark Multiverse Sinestro story.
I want to say no.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that would be a new concept for us to play with. The fact that that its origins are sort of unknown, and we kind of throw out there that it could be from another multiverse, makes me think it's from, it could be also Earth Omega, created by Darkseid, so on and so forth. So that's interesting. I thought it was cool that, in a story that has a lot of S shields and bat symbols and stuff like that, I think it's interesting how much we're focusing on the sidekick of Green Arrow with a Black Lantern ring. There's a lot of actual physical page time devoted to what's happening with him. So I thought that was really cool and interesting.
No, I agree. I think the Roy stuff, obviously, for like you, I think, alluded to, the Roy stuff and the Allen and Obsidian things are really the thing from our perspective, or the really the only thing that really will grab us. Obviously, there's stuff related to what's going on with all the, with the multiverse, the omniverse, even the stuff with Magog and everything else. That's somewhat interesting. What's the threat, and what Bones is trying to put together, and why he's organizing, getting all these heroes together to, from his perspective, what threat that he's trying to meet head on. It is intriguing what's going on that basic level too. But the Roy stuff, just because of the way the ring works, which is seemingly not entirely unique. We've seen some Black Lantern powers before, at least, but without it being, complete, zombified and things like that. But it is interesting that he seems to be able to use the ring. If he's just trying to tap into making constructs and things like that, that he seems to be able to be in control, at least for a period of time. But it's when he basically tries to tap into the AI aspect of the ring, that's when he loses control. So that part is somewhat interesting. The Alan and Obsidian stuff, issue 2, we kind of got the reprieve from, let's focus in on Alan's sexuality. Obviously, they kind of made up for it in this issue because there's multiple conversations alluding to, while they don't specifically talk about, him being gay. Everybody at this point knows Alan Scott's gay because they don't stop talking about it. But they talk about they're talking about his personal life, his romantic life, his sexual life, whatever, in multiple aspects and times with him and Todd talking. So again, it would be nice if they didn't focus on that as much as they do. It's pretty much every time but one appearance, I think, so far that they've had some allusion to that. But I did like even though I don't know most of those characters, I did like the double splash page there of Obsidian helping his father, like, basically beat the crap out of all these old JSA villains trying to find information, thinking that they may be the ones, maybe to get revenge on Alan or something like that. Besides maybe some ties to Jenny too, but just the idea that, could be some old Alan villain trying to get back. This is their way of getting back at Alan. So he's kind of like rattling the cage and just shaking everybody down to try to find information. To see kind of let Alan let loose, if you will. That's kind of that's always interesting.
Yeah, I think it's cool too how this has almost become this book has halfway become a JSA / Return of the Infinity Inc. sort of combination book. I like it. I have an Infinity Inc. poster that, because for those of you who don't know, it still happens. It's a practice. It still happens today, but it also happened, back in the 80s, 90s, so on and so forth. It's a long-standing practice. Publishers like DC will send posters to comic book retailers to advertise in their shop as a way, because not everybody reads previews or solicits or looks at any order forms or whatever. So let's advertise to the readers who come to the store to pick up their new issues of what series are coming out soon. That's how I have a poster from the 90s of the Pat Broderick, Keith Giffen Ragman series. I have that framed on my wall. But I also, when I was shopping online at one point, I bought a couple of others. One of them was the poster that advertises the issue where Kyle Rayner appears on the cover, the first issue of Kyle Rayner's series.
And I have the Emerald Twilight one.
Yeah, I got the poster that's the image of him coming from his battery or whatever towards the reader.
Hal? Huh? Yeah, Hal or Kyle?
Kyle.
Yeah, I have the one that I think technically the one I have pushes is the one for Green Lantern 50, pretty much.
Yeah. And then I have also the poster that advertised the Infinity Inc. series coming out. So both that Kyle poster and this Infinity Inc. poster I want to get framed. Those are my next things to get framed and put up in the new apartment. But I'm a really big fan of Infinity Inc. That era of writing, I don't know. Did you ever read Infinity Inc.?
No.
It's one of those series of that time, like All-Star Squadron, which I also really enjoy, which were like wordy SOBs of a story. So it's kind of if you're going to read Infinity Inc., just be prepared to sit down for a while is all I'm saying. It doesn't necessarily make it, bad or good one way or the other. It's just some issues, depending on the creative team, you go through relatively quick, and other issues you don't. I'm just letting you know Infinity Inc. is not a series you fly through. But it's still good to see that. It's not like we don't get those. So when we get these characters, it's usually the JSA that we focus in on because they're like the golden age here, the legacy heroes, the heroes with names and staying powers. But we don't get like the children of, the proteges of as much anymore. Because if they're going to vote any time to these characters who have failed in publication in one way or the other in terms of, failing to sustain a consistent reader base. I still think they're great characters, but we're talking marketability at this point. I just think that the DC's always been like, well, if we're going to devote time to any of them, we probably have a better chance with the legacy heroes. So they give us Jay and Wildcat and Alan and Mr. Terrific and Hourman and so on and so forth, as opposed to Jade or Obsidian or Atom Smasher or any of these others, or the female Wildcat, so on and so forth. So I just think I thought it was really cool to see them back. I've never read the entirety of Infinity Inc., but it's one of those teams that when they show up, any of the characters, especially on a splash like this with a title like it has at the end of issue 3 with an Infinite Incorporated, it's a shout out moment that makes you smile. So when I saw that, I was like, that's cool. Cool. We're here. I like to see that. So I don't know how you felt about it.
I do like that style when they do that. That's one of the reasons I didn't want to give the title in a way, even though as you describe it, it wouldn't take away from the impact of the splash page as you're audibly, verbally describing it. It's one of those things where sometimes you want to, the impact of the title is relevant where they put it in the issue. So it's kind of good to just keep it there until you get to the point when it's the appropriate reveal time.
For sure. I don't know if there's much to dig into with the Alan and Obsidian stuff. I mean, it's obviously there. All it is, though, is we figure out Bones and the DEO is behind her kidnapping or whatever we want to call it in some way, shape, or form, or at least they know what's happening. So, yeah, I'd be curious to know a little bit more about Alan's involvement with the totality and what the totality's goals are. I don't know that we've learned that if you're just reading Infinite Frontier. Maybe that's been revealed somewhere else, or maybe it was a part of Death Metal or something, or any of those epilogue. I have no idea, but if you're only reading Infinite Frontier, I don't know that we have a good handle on what the totality is and what it does, because it's Alan, it's Mr. Terrific, it's Savage, it's supposed to be Hawk Girl, and wasn't it like Lex or somebody in the first issue 1?
I think so. I think that sounds right.
I don't like, because we have Justice Incarnate, and then however you feel about the cast of characters, I think we have an idea of what their job is, because Batman mentions at the beginning of issue 2 that there's open communication between all the multiverses so that we can keep we can kind of keep in communication with each other, so we're aware of upcoming threats and stuff. So each individual league or whatever the team of heroes is on any given world is responsible for their own world, but Justice Incarnate helps kind of coordinate and work with the impacted worlds or multiverses rather of their respective things when it's a multiversal based problem. So they help coordinate and things like that. So, I mean, regardless of how you feel about the cast, like I said, at least what their purpose is makes sense. I don't know. Is the totality just Earth Zero's resident Justice Incarnate? Like there's a Justice League who handles, just regular threats. There's the Justice League Dark, which handles magical based stuff, as we know. Is the totality Earth Zero's team responsible for managing any multiversal related problems specifically occurring on Earth Zero? Is that what it's supposed to be?
Probably. That's your guess is as good as mine when it comes to this at this point. I think it's very, very up in the air. Plus, that's what happens when you don't get you have all these different groups being introduced and you don't get a whole lot of firm defining of their responsibilities and their roles.
Yeah, we're spending a lot of time with Justice League Incarnate, and then obviously the League and the Dark are appearing elsewhere, but we know what their roles are. It was Mr. Terrific. Oh, Talia. It was Talia Al Ghul.
Yes.
Lex and Savage and Hawkgirl. Yeah. Yeah, I guess from that first confrontation against Extant, that's what their job is as the totality. But I don't know. Why did the totality need to be involved and or introduced in this? I'm just very confused, because if the story you're telling with Alan is something happened to Jade and Obsidian and Alan are going to team up to go find out what happened, the DEO is the reason for it in some capacity. What role does the totality play other than what Mr. Terrific does here, just saying we've been investigating the disappearance of other people and here they are, only to set up the reveal later on of those same people stepping in the Roy Harper situation? That doesn't seem like enough of a reason to involve them here.
There's not a lot of clarity in a lot of this, to be perfectly honest. There's a whole lots of puzzle pieces, but not enough to put anything together yet. So I think that's part of the issue with this dragging on as slowly as it is so far, that it's like you also don't know what the end game is going to be by issue 6 at this point. How much more clarity we're going to get, at least about either what's coming or these pieces that we would like to see them connect, like Roy and who's ever calling him, which we assume is, of course, is Darkseid. And they only have, technically they have 2 more issues since 4 came out. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's any more juice for me to squeeze from this pulp. So I don't want to drag on episode wise in terms of length, looking for content to discuss. But yeah, I wasn't thinking about it as soon as we started, but after I started reading it a little bit, it's just I don't understand why the totality needed to be here and what their exact purpose is. So I thought I'd ask that. But regardless, issue 4 is out as of today, folks. Just peeling back the curtain. I've flipped through it. Not a whole lot more is revealed. There's some stuff to talk about, but not a lot. Mark, do you want to talk a bit about how we're probably going to cover Infinite Frontier moving forward, just so that they know?
Well, we had contemplated this, I think, a little bit before. Probably what we're going to do, considering how it's paced so far, and because we don't want to, just an internal thing for us, we've been talking about, which we've talked about before. We don't want to just basically be mining stuff for content that we're not overly passionate about, or that may not necessarily even deserve full episodes. So the game plan basically at this point, unless something changes, is to do 4 through 6 in its own in one last episode. That 4 is out now, so we'll wait till 5 and 6 come out, and then we'll just do all 3 of those issues, and then we can give our thoughts on the whole mini event or whatever it is, the prologue to an event, whatever it turns out to be. Then we can give our thoughts and have a better idea of how it works, especially since we'll be reviewing the last 3 chapters back to back to back.
Yeah, the only caveat, I guess, being, if something, obviously 4 is already out, nothing massive happens in that. But if 5 comes out and something huge worthy of discussion comes out, maybe we do a 4 and 5 episode rather than a 4, 5, and 6. But yeah, right now the plan is, like Mark said, 4, 5, and 6 in one big app.
Cool.
All right, what's next?
Time to discuss your trailer.
That's right. Do we want to watch it on episode, or do we want to not worry about the audio?
I'm fine if you don't want to play it. If you just want to talk about it, I think that I don't necessarily think we need to play it, but it's up to you.
Oh yeah, it's what, 2.5 minutes?
Yeah,
it's not too bad. All right, so let's see here. Get this thing going. I'll get it unmuted. At the very least, it'll make it easier for Mark for editing if he wants to get in his own audio. But regardless, all right. So the trailer, Let There Be Carnage, official trailer number 2 over on YouTube on the Sony Pictures Entertainment YouTube channel. Looking at the 0-minute mark, and here we go.
All I ever wanted in this world is carnage.
Eddie, we should be out there snacking on bad guys. I am a predator. I need to be free.
You have got to get control of your aggression, or you will get hauled off into Area 51. You live in my body. You live by my rules.
I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. Please let me fix it so I can forget it again. You are a loser.
Eddie Brock. I want to give you my story. People love serial killers. Please, why me? What's mine is yours. And what's yours is mine. I have tasted blood before, and that is not it. All I ever wanted in this world is carnage. I'm not a crazy man. I am a vengeful one.
Oh, shit!
Whoa, where you going?
That is a red one!
You need to come out right now. I will let you eat everybody!
Promise!
I promise!
Oh, yeah!
Eddie, you feel like home to me. Like family.
Oh, wow.
You could just say I'm happy for you.
That was going to be us!
I am happy for you.
No!
God, I'm so sorry.
Not sorry!
This dude needs some serious couples counseling.
All right, what do you think of that?
I liked it. I liked the first trailer too. This trailer at least gives us a little bit more of the, well, it gives you on the surface, it tells you how he ends up becoming Carnage, where he gets the symbiote. But yeah, I liked it. I do. It also hints at future problems for Eddie with that little agreement that he makes with Venom, because that's going to be a big post Let There Be Carnage problem for him, because of the deal he makes with Carter, with Venom, to like, oh yeah, you can eat everybody. It's like, that's gonna be a problem. that could be your Spider-Man segue right there. It's the eventual entrance in Spider-Man into the universe that the shared Spider-Verse they're building here with Morbius and Vulture and all these characters that are crossing over, that could open the door for why Spider-Man and Venom now might be on opposite ends of the spectrum if Eddie starts losing some control over the symbiote based on his own words and his own agreement. I mean the special effects are cool. I wasn't really concerned about that aspect of this movie. I think it looks good, and I think there's reason to be hopeful that it will draw people in when that's September, right? That's a September release. Right?
I thought it was pushed back because of COVID. I thought I saw that article recently. I'll look it up.
Yeah, I thought it was still September.
The initial Googling says September 24th, 2021, but
I think that is correct.
The international release date is delayed. So like MovieWeb and the other places are speculating that it might be pushed back soon in the US. International, though, has been delayed. Those articles were trending just yesterday. So
yeah, I don't know if it's going to. I don't know. And we'll talk about this a little bit more once we segue into Suicide Squad. I don't know if it's going to be pushed back. I don't know. The reality is, now this comes out after Shang-Chi, because Shang-Chi is Labor Day, right? I believe.
I think so, yeah.
That's a little late in the game to push it back, waiting that long. But that's about the only thing that would make you, if Shang-Chi were to completely tank, even though again there's reasons if Shang-Chi tanks that you can't just say, oh, COVID, but that would be the only reason why I would consider moving it if I were Sony right now. I wouldn't certainly do it because of Suicide Squad, and I certainly would. And if Free Guy bombs this weekend, I wouldn't do it because of that either, because you have to, and we'll talk about this more in a second, so I don't want to steer us off course. I think they should roll with it. I think September 24th. I think that's a good release time. You can't keep pushing back everything. I mean, you're going to have to just suck it up at some point, especially for them, because they don't have they don't have their own streaming platform, or else you could at least, which we know opens up cans of worms anyway, but at least they would have an option to still make easy money not as much, but easy money they wouldn't have to share with anybody else if they had their own platform. I think they're going to stick with it. I think there's reason to believe that this movie could do well, that you can still put asses in the seats if the movie is interesting enough to people, and it's the only place to see it. I still think there's every reason to believe people will go.
Yeah. So it's obvious. It's not like the Spider-Man movies in terms of Marvel's cooperation with Sony. It's not as involved. But what platform would this be released on, streaming wise?
I forget the inner workings of the deal. I know Sony made their new deal that a lot of these movies are going to end up on Netflix first, but eventually, at least I don't know if it's all the Marvel content or just the shared stuff, the Spider-Man stuff. That eventually that stuff is going to also end up on Disney Plus. Those are the deals that they made. They made deals with both Disney Plus and Netflix. Netflix gets it first, so they're going to pretty much get it, I think, probably within 9 months to a year after it's out of theaters, or maybe it's like 6 months to a year after it's out of theaters. I forget to find the language in that deal, but then maybe like a year after that, Disney Plus gets it. So at some point, you would be able to watch the entire Infinity Saga, every single part of it. Actually, except for the Incredible Hulk, right? They still don't have the Incredible Hulk because of their Universal problems. But moving beyond, let's forget about the Incredible Hulk for a moment. That would be the only movie that at some point in the near future that you could not sit down if you wanted to watch the MCU, all the Infinity Saga in whichever order you wanted to watch it in. You'll be able to even watch the 3 Spider-Man movies at some point based on the deals that Sony has made. So Netflix would probably be the first place it would appear. I don't think they have.
So it won't have a day and date digital release.
No, it's definitely it's not a day. It's not a day and date. Just like Spider-Man wouldn't. Just like I think Sony would have been the one. That would have been talk about an interesting arrangement. If they had decided to do something like that with No Way Home, can just imagine the kind of contract negotiation that would have involved, considering that if they were going to do a day and date release, then obviously Sony was going to want to, probably at the very least, they were going to want at least half that money that Disney would be making on Disney Plus off of it, which is fair considering technically speaking it is Sony's movie. No day and date release for any of the Sony movies. So I think they'll stick with it unless theaters start closing. Yeah, I think they'll stick with it.
Yeah, I mean, outside of all that, so first of all, guys, yes, I want to see it bad. But for those of you who don't know, Austin has re-entered stage 5 lockdowns with the Delta variant and everything that's happening over here. So where will we be by the time this comes out in late September? I don't know. That's why I was very curious about day and date and the potential digital release, because that might make it a little easier depending on what's happening locally here with COVID. So, but hopefully I will see the movie really, relatively soon, close to the release date. That's the hope. But who knows what the hell will happen. Regardless, though, in terms of content, I really liked the trailer. I thought it was, I don't know what's up with this trend of them setting trailers to very common, very popular songs that are modernly redone. In this case, it's the One Is the Loneliest Number song or whatever. That's a trend in trailers, right? I'm not crazy like we've been seeing. No, there is
a certain trend of mining older songs, especially I think songs from the 70s or 80s and things like that, and actually even some songs even from the 90s. So you're right, they've been trying to mine some popular songs and kind of like just change the beats and the rhythms and things like that.
Yeah. Like most other trailers they've done that on, it works here too. I do like that this is a lot. I mean, there's still some comedy, obviously, but I do like that this is a lot more serious. Some of the sequences and the cinematography specifically in terms of the way the camera is moving, the lighting, the special effects, the panning of the cameras and stuff like that seems to match the first movie, especially in terms of that sequence from the first movie. If you guys remember when Eddie breaks into the Life Foundation, and it's got that very like body horror, just straight up horror vibe when the alarm is going off and symbiotes are being released and like all this other stuff. So I do like that seems to match here. Couple of interesting things to me. It happens twice. We see this girl and she lets out this sonic scream. We don't see her covered in any sort of stuff, so I don't think we're going to anybody who's not a symbiote fan would know this, or just a comics fan who's familiar with the symbiotes. That's probably Scream, the symbiote Scream. The only problem I have with some of this stuff, so let's focus specifically on Scream. The only problem I have with some of this is in the first Venom movie, we had a bunch of different symbiotes in canisters, and one of them was Scream's color pattern. She was sort of brownish red. It wasn't like a full-on black, but lots of yellow streaks in it and so on and so forth. It was my understanding after multiple viewings of the first Venom movie that all the other symbiotes except Venom died. So I guess this is not, or either that wasn't Scream, or also how do we get Scream? Because it looks like she's locked up, and she's locked up in sort of a similar containment module. So like, did they? I don't know. The other thing is, now, guys, I've tried to read a lot of various symbiote stuff lately. So, especially with like King in Black and Extreme Carnage and stuff happening right now and all that, I'm getting things jumbled in my head. But to my knowledge, Scream doesn't have like a unique power. Like, her name is Scream, but she doesn't have like a Black Canary scream. Like, she doesn't have a sonic scream. And the other side of that, guys, is don't forget, symbiotes have two weaknesses: fire and sonics. So why would they give Scream a sonic scream? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. There were rumors for a long time that Scream is supposed to appear in this movie. So the fact that we're seeing this woman scream twice in this trailer makes me think that it's going to be Scream. But I'm trying to rack my brain for other Marvel Universe related villains who could maybe, or antagonists or something of that effect, that would have a powered scream that would be relevant to this story. But I can't think of anything. So all I can think of here is this has to be Scream the symbiote. So I mean, I don't know. The other side of that coin is her origins would have to be completely different, because like Carnage, it's an offspring of the Venom symbiote. And that's where I want to go into Carnage's origin here, because it looks like what happens is Cletus takes a bite out of Eddie. His blood enters into Cletus's system, and because Venom and Eddie are bonded, he gets a sort of combination of both, or whatever, symbiote blood or whatever in him. And that would be a good way to explain sort of those symbiote seeds, because that's what Scream is. The Life Foundation captured and forcibly extracted 5 different seeds from the Venom symbiote back when, Scream and the others were first introduced, I don't know, 80s or something. But regardless, you could say, okay, it enters into the seed, enters into Cletus, and that's how he becomes Carnage. But what's very interesting to me here is the way Cletus transforms. If you look at how Venom transforms, the symbiote kind of crawls up and over him, and it's like a suit, right? It wears Eddie, or Eddie wears it, whatever you want to say. But what happens in Cletus's transformation looks like full transformation. Like, Cletus isn't wearing Carnage or vice versa. Cletus morphs and melts and forms into Carnage. It's not sliding over him. He is erupting this symbiote. It's hard for me to distinguish what is actually happening, because in the close-ups, it looks like he's morphing into Carnage, but in some of the earlier sequences, like when he first wakes up after biting Eddie, like it sort of seems like it's oozing out of his pores, which would sort of align with what we think of the other symbiotes that we've seen thus far in this cinematic side of things. But then you see the guards in the prison or whatever take a shot at the torso of Carnage and blow a massive hole in the center of him, and it just looks like Carnage. Now we know that when Eddie fell off of that bike or whatever, that was at least the main example of it. In the first movie, he like broke his arms and stuff, and Venom was able to sort of heal him, reform his bones, and heal that, and so on and so forth. So maybe that same thing is happening here to Cletus, but you're not seeing Cletus inside Carnage. You're not seeing any wounds happening to Cletus. It just looks like they blew a hole in a massive being of red energy. And then the other thing is, it's just like when you take that another step further, it's just like, okay, so then is Carnage a true symbiote? Does Carnage in this case, if he's not the same as Venom, does Cletus have a relationship with a being that has its own personality as Carnage, or are we going to get something where Cletus is Carnage, but because Cletus has schizophrenic tendencies, Carnage is just a personality and not an actual being? I don't know. And I don't know that, like a lot of comic fans, I want everything to be as true to the original comics as possible. And I want Carnage to be a true symbiote. But if the entire point of Carnage is just honestly flat out Carnage, that he is insane, that he's powerful, that he's going to kill everybody without regard for anything, that's the point of the character. So like, does it really matter if he's really a symbiote or if he's just a personality? I don't know. It's it's just weird to me. I know you're not like as big of a fan of symbiotes as I am. I'm just trying to figure out if I really like what I think I'm learning about Carnage here.
Well, again, it's all speculation at this point. I mean, there are reasons to believe they're going down the road you're talking about based on what we've seen in this trailer and based on what we believe to be how he becomes infected anyway, that it's a bastardization of the symbiote that's already inside Eddie. But maybe there'll be more of a logical explanation for the differences. Maybe even Venom himself will have the explanation as once he realizes once Eddie and Venom realize what's happened to Cletus and everything, that maybe Venom himself will give us the explanation for why that symbiote. Maybe it simply is relation to the red one, as he said. Oh shit, that's a red one. That one's red. That maybe there's just a different hierarchy, and certain red ones just have unique powers. And regardless of how he got a red symbiote, it's the fact that now that one's red, or maybe it'll be a combination of had to do with some of the drugs they were pumping into Cletus when they were trying to kill him, and that caused a change in the symbiote. Maybe it wouldn't technically have been that either red or that way without the drugs being pumped into his system at the same time, and him then reacting to said injections. So we'll see. I certainly, honestly, I'm more interested in seeing this movie than Shang-Chi, though I do want to see Shang-Chi, and certainly more than the Eternals, which we
still haven't seen a lot of.
So if you want to look at one movie that you might want to think that there's a chance it could move, I guess you would still have to. We're going to know soon enough with the Eternals, because if it's not going to move, they have to have a new trailer when Shang-Chi comes out, which pretty much gives you like about a month from now. They need to have a trailer, because there's no way you can roll into that Marvel movie and not have the next. Now I understand. Well, yeah, I was going to say, well, because of the day and date, but Shang-Chi isn't day and date. So no, that's going to be in the theater. That's going to be in theaters only. So the reality is they're going to want the Eternals trailer on that movie, because that's the next project. Just like you would think between now and then, in the next couple of weeks, you'd think they'd like to put out the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer. Now would be a good time. You're not stealing thunder from Venom. You're not stealing thunder. I mean, Shang-Chi, you've already put out enough stuff. You have to remind people it's coming out, but you shouldn't be leaking much more information, much more visuals anyway, unless you're really desperate. And now would be the time, because what are you going to do if you're going to wait to release Spider-Man after you drop the next Eternals trailer? Then guess what? At 2 minutes after Spider-Man drops, no one's going to give a shit about the Eternals trailer anymore, because more people care about Spider-Man. So if you want the Eternals to have any kind of legs from that trailer and keep people interested, you want that to be to at least have a couple of weeks where the Eternals is the exclusive focus, and that trailer has to come out soon, or else what's the point?
Yeah, I didn't mean to harp on too long, but I think there was so much shown of the actual transformation and the symbiote, and then of course the allusions to Scream. I was just like, and as a symbiote fan, it made me think about what they're actually trying to accomplish here and what the actual origins of these new symbiotes is going to be. But all right, on to Suicide Squad.
Yes, on to the latest DC turd, certainly from a box office perspective. The Suicide Squad opened up. Not that many people seem to notice, but it opened up to about $26.5 million, underachieved. Was it better? We all do this, even though it's not much of a litmus test, especially in this case. But sometimes we go, well, it was better than the last one. And that happens to be true, but that's not much of a bar. It's not much of a bar to clear, in all honesty, with this movie. Is it better? Oh, yeah, it's definitely better than the David Ayers crap that we got. And I don't care what he says. Unless the studio made him use the villains that they did and told them to use the heroes that they did and make the story pretty much what it did. Unless they're guilty of all of that, then I don't believe that David Ayers' director's cut would have been significantly better than what we got. I think that was just a shit project. And with B-tier heroes, which is one of the big problems with the Suicide Squad, they're all B-tier heroes. Most people don't even, or characters, not even heroes. They're B-tier characters that almost nobody knows anything about.
C tier.
Oh, yes, you're right, to be fair. Harley Quinn might be a B-tier character. Might be. Obviously, from a box office perspective, that's probably accurate based on the movies she's been in, not counting the first Suicide Squad, looking at her own movie and this movie, which are pretty much doing about the same from a box office perspective. If you want to assume that a decent amount of the box office attention and reason people went to see it was because of her, yeah, she might be a B tier character. Everybody else, yeah, you're correct. Nobody knows almost any of these characters. This movie did benefit from the fact that, at least though they were on paper, they were probably shittier characters to throw in, but they were more interesting. So that is something Gunn does. Gunn does have a talent for taking characters and making you care about them. So even though they were characters you never in a million years would have thought you would have given a rat's, no pun intended here, or maybe intended, ass about when you went to see this, but with characters like Polka Dot Man and Ratcatcher 2, and King Shark to a lesser extent, but you had a bunch of these C-tier characters that had stories and were interesting. So that's a big plus to this compared to the first one. But at the end of, I have other things I want to say. I want to turn it back over to you in a second, but it was entertaining. It's certainly more rewatchable than the first movie. You got a cooler villain. Then again, compared to the first movie, you couldn't have had a worse villain, probably. I mean, maybe you could have, but it'd been really difficult. But it shouldn't be surprising that this movie didn't do particularly well at the box office for multiple reasons, which we'll talk about. But why don't you give your thoughts before I go into any of that?
I mean, I think it'll have an upswing. I don't know an upswing necessarily in terms of, it'll gain more in the upcoming weekend than it did in the first. But just in terms of, we might see it, just gain just momentum, because there is a lot of positivity, at least in the circles I'm seeing. I mean, granted, we already sort of run in a comic centric circle, not necessarily the average consumer, but comic fans seem to enjoy this film, and are saying things like, man, I was surprised I really like it as much as I did. I said it on Facebook. It was a stupid movie that was intended to be stupid, but was somehow entertaining despite its stupidity. I enjoyed it. While it was interesting and cool from a DC fan's perspective to see these C and frankly sometimes D-list characters show up and then just immediately get murked because of what the Suicide Squad actually is, what their purpose is. Somebody's got to die, and in this case, like, a lot of people died. As a DC fan, maybe that's just like, okay, cool, we got those characters. It was cool to see them, but at the same time, I wished for more. I wish for bigger names and maybe we don't have to see Superman in it, but maybe let's see a B tier character just show up somewhere. But whatever. I thought Idris Elba did good. Harley, of course, by Margot was Harley. She did well. The visuals were cool. Starro was cool. I was surprised how close to the original concept Starro actually was. And he looked like Starro. Starro sometimes artistically has been drawn certain ways. He looks more like in a lot of the artistic representations, he's more like one of those stringy starfishes that the legs or the appendages or whatever you want to call them are more. There's still 5 of them, but they're like longer and spindly instead of short and fat. So him being designed the way he was had a bit of a comedic aspect to it. I don't know, because it was a stupid movie intended to be stupid. It's hard to just heap praise on it. But I sat there, I watched it, I didn't hate it, I didn't feel like what the hell did I just watch? Why did I spend any time watching it? I didn't sit there and kind of struggle with my feelings with it like I did with the first Suicide Squad movie that I just ultimately just didn't like. But I had fun with it, and I'm glad it exists. And I'll buy it on Blu-ray when it comes out and add it to the shelf.
I was somewhat disappointed in the movie. I can't tell you necessarily why. Some of it was the creative choices, I think, in the movie. Some of the things that they did, and some of that is the pro and con that comes with James Gunn. That James Gunn has a certain style, and not just. See, sometimes people get spoiled, brainwashed into thinking that the epitome of who James Gunn is just Guardians of the Galaxy. When if you've seen other things that he does, or has done, I should say, that's kind of James Gunn being somewhat confined and constrained and reined in. By all accounts, he got to do what he wanted on this movie. Just like Patty Jenkins got to do what she wanted on Wonder Woman 84, despite the fact that the studios never really thought it was going to work, but they let her do it. He pretty much got carte blanche on this movie. I'm sure that was part of the deal of when they grabbed to scoop him up immediately after his Twitter fallout and his firing from Disney, that they probably said, oh yeah, we want this to be a hard R. You can do it. You can do whatever you want. And there's pros and cons that come with giving James Gunn free rein on things like this. He has and I'm not a prude by any stretch of the imagination, so I'm not saying I'm offended by this, but he has a very crude sense of humor. I mean, as you can tell by the fact that even in the Guardians movies, he still can't. There's going to be some dick and bodily function joke that makes it into the movie, but it's still in a relatively, it's kind of like in a very confined space because you know what it's expected out of you. You know it's a PG-13 movie. You know what Feige is going to allow, what he's not going to allow, especially having done 2 movies. This movie, you kind of see, he does there's a lot of that humor. The violence is real. I mean, again, violence doesn't faze me in a movie, but there's a lot of really, really gory stuff in this movie. Some of the animal cruelty scenes were weird too, like setting the birds on fire. I don't quite see why that was necessary, really. But I know he balances it out at different points in the movie. You can make the case he balances it out with the rats, because I think that was like a subtext to this, that because rats are really supposed to be really awesome pets, so he wanted to get that vibe across that, hey, hoping that people would get more rats as pets after this movie. I heard something like that. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But James Gunn, left to his own devices, I think he might be somebody who is better when you rein him in a little bit. You had some confusion about, why this movie didn't do as well as it could have. box. I mean, and it didn't do all that well downloading wise too. So it's not like it had great download numbers compared to, like Mortal Kombat and other day and date releases on Warner Brothers so far either. So it's not like it did okay at the box office, but did great on HBO Max. So far, the numbers don't indicate that that's the case. He had confusion about whether this was a sequel or a reboot or both, such as the confusion with Bloodsport. Is he Deadshot? The whole confusion all back and forth whether Idris Elba was playing Will Smith's character or not, which you could understand based on the movie. Why, even if you were working on the movie and didn't work on and had no working knowledge of the characters, why you might think it was the same character? Because other than being a bigger douchebag, that the whole motivation for him doing what he did is very similar with his daughter. Not quite the same motivation, and certainly the relationship isn't the same between father and daughter. But that's the main. But still, to help his daughter is the reason why he ultimately goes on this mission. So you could understand even amongst people at Warner Brothers why they might have gotten legitimately confused. The importance of brand in this post-pandemic or muddling through pandemic world, I think that's really important. Suicide Squad's not, it's not a big brand. Even amongst comic book fans, it's not a big brand. You're lucky if if you've even heard about half the characters that appear in the books, let alone in this movie especially. It's even lower tier characters who they make interesting because that's one of James Gunn's strengths. But like we mentioned, there's nobody knows who these people are. That's not going to draw people to the theater. Just like it's debatable whether this version of Harley Quinn has a broad appeal. And I think it actually is. It is debatable if that's the case. And you probably didn't read it, but and that's not why I sent it to you anyway. But the article I sent you on Saturday, which talked about what the projected box office for this movie was going to be. I only had that deadline article because it was the first article of the day on Saturday that actually was doing the full weekend projections at that point. But the article itself, by luck of the draw, was interesting because the deadline article not purposely, but when you're reading the article, it's clear that the writer isn't drinking the Kool-Aid and just blaming it all on all COVID-19 or it's all streaming, and that's the reason why it tanked. Because I think there were people in the insiders in the business that all along for the last few weeks, or maybe even longer than that, like last few months, that were saying this basically the tracking on this movie was tracking more like Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, the emancipation of Harley Quinn, that it was tracking more like that there was every reason to think that this movie was going to have a relatively soft opening based on the appeal or lack thereof to this movie, and the fact that it's not a brand, it's not something people know very well, it's not a big motivating factor to go to the theater, whether you're a little bit concerned, not concerned at all, somewhere completely concerned, certainly wouldn't even consider going to see this, but just a general maybe slightly to maybe more than slightly concerned about going to see the movie in the current environment. There's not enough there for this project to draw people to the theater. And especially when you compare it to the week before, the conditions in the whole country haven't changed dramatically from one week to the next. And Jungle Cruise overperformed. And Jungle Cruise, even with Disney Plus siphoning off money from it, it still overperformed in week one compared to, in a COVID sense, it overperformed. Obviously not based on how it would have performed last July if it had gotten to open normally. But even this week, it only dropped like around 55%. And almost every movie after its opening weekend in the post-pandemic world of everything reopening this year has dropped like around between like 68 and 70%. Almost everything's dropped closer to 70% in week two, but yet it held about 55. It only dropped 55%. So I think there's every reason to believe if there's a movie out there that people want to go see, especially family movies, they will go see it. I don't think I've heard a lot of people say good things about, I've read a lot of good things about Suicide Squad. I've also read people who said that they weren't happy with it, or they thought it was going to be better, or they're James Gunn fans and they thought, but the reality is I think it's a small target base for this movie. So even if the people who like it, who went to go see it, they like it and they say, oh, this was good, that doesn't mean a huge percentage of the non-diehard fans, whether it's Gunn diehard fans, if you're not a Gunn diehard fan, maybe a comic book movie diehard fan, I don't think there was a lot of incentive to draw people out to go see this, or that the trailers did that much to draw people in.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I just, it wasn't one I was like super stoked for or anything. I didn't anticipate it. I did appreciate how much DC put into marketing for it. Especially around I think was it San Diego, as well as DC fandom. There was a lot of like, pushes for it, and the color scheme was everywhere, the roster was everywhere, just James Gunn's involvement was everywhere. So I did like the sort of unique marketing campaign they push for it. And at the end of the day, regardless of whether I liked it or not, this film sort of really embraces the idea of not every DC project has to be for you as a DC fan. I really do, regardless of whatever I personally think about it, I really hope it gets a second life or a cult following or whatever, because all it really means to me is, it shows DC like, we want something other than Superman, Batman. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what I want. I love the DC universe. Give me, that freaking Blue Beetle movie. Give me JSA. Give me, whatever. I mean, I want to see the DC universe explored. And I don't want just yet another Batman movie and yet another Superman movie. Give me more DC. And if this movie has success or cult following or whatever, then that would prove some sort of viability of the idea that we should explore something other than the Trinity.
And I think there's validity in that. I understand why. I mean, we've talked about this a lot on the show. I understand your perspective on that. And I do agree that, but it's one of those catch-22 things, especially from Warner Brothers, because as we talk about, money talks, that at the end of the day, if the majority of the movies they release that are not Superman, Batman related tend not to do well, then that just keeps telling them that, well, we probably should at least tie it into Superman and Batman somehow, which is kind of funny because I think there was one version of this movie that Superman was supposed to be the one fighting Suicide Squad. But they also have, the problem with DC is that they don't have the goodwill that Marvel has. Now, mind you, Marvel could be potentially in Disney could be kind of like pissing away some of that goodwill, depending how things go, not just with Scarlett Johansson in the lawsuit, but let's see how Shang-Chi performs, especially since you can't count on getting China money for that movie. The Eternals, which you pretty much can take to the bank, they're not going to ever get China money for that movie. That maybe they're not that, just even if it's, you just want to blame it on the current box office environment and people are going to be a lot more pickier when it comes to going to see stuff in the theater, that it's possible that those days for Marvel, at least for now, of being able to release anything with an MCU label and know that it's, at the very least, it's going to make a lot of money, even if people don't think it's particularly high in the list compared to other movies in the pantheon, it's still going to do really well. Maybe right now they're at the end of that point, even if it's temporary, that they're hitting that lull. But the point is, Marvel's built that up over 10 plus years. So they can release something that on the surface that nobody really, I mean, nobody, of course, it's in quotes, because there's always some people that are interested in anything. But most people were not clamoring for a Shang-Chi or an Eternals movie. There are much bigger characters in the MCU that haven't premiered yet that people would have preferred to see movies on, or solo movies on if we've seen them in other projects. But for DC, they haven't had a whole lot of success doing things like this, and they are picking a lot of obscure properties. And Suicide Squad was always a shaky thing. It's like, oh, well, this is going to be our Guardians, and that's even before they had James Gunn. But it's like, people look at Guardians, and it's like they think that it's almost, and I'm not saying it's a complete fluke that it worked out that way, but people think that, oh, it's almost like all you have to do is put this together and copy some of the elements of Guardians, and and it'll work out the same way. And it's like, no, not necessarily. I mean, that movie really succeeded in spite of itself conceptually, just because nobody knew who the hell they were. But the trailers drew people into that movie. The trailers got buzz for that soundtrack. Movie. Yes, that was also in the trailer. But I mean, before the movie came out, the reason why people were interested in seeing that movie was because of yes, the music, but how that movie was being portrayed, and it showed you something different. So even though you didn't know, you didn't know Star-Lord from Adam, it didn't matter because the reality is it looked intriguing. And then and the MCU had some goodwill at that point where it's like, okay, DC doesn't really have that. So they're picking a lot of obscure crap. Suicide Squad is really, 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 really bottom of the barrel stuff to begin with. And James Gunn did a good job with what, again, I think he picked who he wanted in this movie, but he did a good job telling stories. I mean, like Ratcatcher 2 was really cool. She was really likable. Polka Dot Man was pretty cool. King Shark in his own way was cool. I mean, Peacemaker's a douchebag, but he's supposed to be. But the reality, I'm John Cena'd out in all honesty. But the reality is he made interesting characters out of people that you normally wouldn't have even thought of, that you would give a shit if the whole plane blew up right before they even landed, and that was it. But they keep picking some of these obscure characters, and especially because they're taking the approach now that, we're not going to, much like the comic books, we're not going to have continuity. We're not going to tie this into other movies. We're not going to be telling one big story or building towards this. So there's really no investment, which is one of the things that Marvel had going for them. Even if you went to see the movie and you didn't like it, you knew it was a part of something. And it's like, oh, well, maybe the next thing that they're building and the next part in this story will be better for me. But it all fits together, and it was it kind of was important that I saw it, at least, so I don't miss anything. With the way they're telling stories now in the extended universe, it doesn't really matter because you don't know how much what's connecting to this and what's connecting to that. Is Flashpoint really going to be the Flash movie really going to reboot this stuff? Is this the way they're getting rid of Ben Affleck's Batman forever because of that, or are they really going to continue on with Ben Affleck's Batman and none of the stuff really ultimately matters? And it's hard to know, but I think they're picking a lot of obscure stuff, and plus even the rebooting of Batman as soon as they did, and maybe Pattinson will be good, maybe he won't, but it seems an awful fast reboot going back to like a year one story. But either way, well, I think that's part of DC's issue. They're all over the map. And for all the people who point fingers and say, the Snyder Cut sycophants, it's like, if they just let people do these creators do what they wanted. Well, you had 2 movies back to back in which the creators did do what they wanted. And guess what? Overall, it doesn't seem to have worked. Now, while Suicide Squad may work better with the audience as far compared to Wonder Woman 1984, when you look at the big picture between financial and critics and everything else, Suicide Squad is probably going to do better than Wonder Woman 1984, but both are not going to do well at the box office. And that's something to look at, that it just kind of reinforces that at the end of the day, it takes a lot, it takes a lot to make something successful. It's not always just one person, and it's not just, if you just let the studio get out of the way. Well, the studio did get out of the way, certainly for Wonder Woman 84, and that crashed and burned. There's not just one way to make something, and they just need to better game plan. They need somebody to run this, to basically oversee stuff, and not Snyder. They need someone to oversee stuff to at least come up with a coherent vision of what they're doing, even if everything's not going to be interconnected, but just to try to focus more on, try to give people more what they're interested in. And it's not like, we have this property, let's grab like Blue Beetle. It's like, hey, I'd be interested in that just because I like the kid from Cobra Kai. But the reality is, do we think the majority of people are going to give a shit about a Jaime Garcia version of Blue Beetle? If you even know who Blue Beetle is, that's probably not the Blue Beetle most people know. So and that depends the story they tell, and depends who else. Maybe it's going to be something like Black Adam, where you can have a lot of other characters, superheroes in the movie, even if he's the star or the main character. There's going to be a lot of other supporting heroes in it that people might know or find interesting. But I do feel a little bit bad because this movie is certainly better than I think it's better than the box office has reflected. But it is what it is. I mean, I think it's a limited appeal project, and James Gunn, for all the positives about James Gunn, leaving out the negatives, he's never really been proven to be a huge box office draw other than Guardians. That's his main claim to fame from a box office perspective, as far as racking up big bucks to prove that, putting his name on a movie is going to put asses in the seats. It pretty much comes down to Guardians. So,
yeah. All right. Anything else you want to talk about?
Well, if we hadn't gone on so long in the last two segments, I would have ripped into Snake Eyes, which I really want to do at one point. But we'll have to push that to the next time we're talking more about pop culture stuff, because it won't take me long to vent, but I do need to vent about that movie. So since we know what the next episode is going to be, it won't be next week.
All righty. Well, if people want to reach out to us and talk about Infinite Frontier and where it may be headed, or their thoughts on Let There Be Carnage or Suicide Squad, how do they do so?
LanternCast.com is the website. LanternCast@gmail.com is the best way to contact us. You can follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, #GLCast to track us down there. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. We are on those, whichever platform or platforms you listen to us on. Please leave us a positive review. And last but not least, you can leave us a voicemail or text us at 708-LANTERN. 708-LANTERN, and let us know what you think.
All right. Next episode, we're talking Green Lantern 5, right?
Green Lantern 5 it will be.
All right, guys. Talk to you then.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.